Hello Næss. Welcome to the Theatre Café Webinar Series. You're a playwright, a dramaturg. You've worked at Hålogaland Teater until recently, where you've been programming. You've been programming for festivals. You've done a lot of work in the theatre and also a lot of work for young audiences. So thank you for coming and participating.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about programming. And we'll get to writing a bit later, and also what it's like being a dramaturg. We'll start with programming. Can you tell me about your experience of programming theatre for young audiences at a regional theatre in Norway?
Well, my experiences have been extremely good, and that's because we have an artistic director who's very concerned about programming for children and young, and who has an education in the field. She's educated from Stockholm, from the theatre school there, who's got a specific program concerning children and young, and they're sort of trained in the Susanne Osten tradition, which is sort of very eager on looking at theatre from children's perspective, very interested in the children's perspective, and also very interested in artistic expressions. So she was very keen on programming for children and young with very qualified artists, and that the artistic side of it should be very central to the production. So although we did some commercial productions, a very uncommercial starting point and a very sort of art-based starting point with the children at heart. So for me that was a very good experience. I don't think I would have wanted to program for children and young with anyone else but her at the moment in Norway. Or maybe some other people, but at least I felt really comfortable about the task she gave me when she said, okay, let's program for children and young. I felt very comfortable about doing it with her and in her framework in a way.
Can you tell me more about that framework then? What were you trying to achieve, and what kind of productions did you program?
Well, we're trying to manage theatre programming for 4 years, which is the normal period for a theatre director, or artistic director at Norwegian Theatre. Usually they stay for 4 years, so we had a 4-year framework where the theatre for children and young was as big a part of the productions we presented as the ones for adults. And also at Hålogaland Teater there is a children and youth group with young actors, and it was very important for us to involve them as well. And when we did that, of course it was that it was a big thing that the budgets should be as good, as big, and that we should do things at the main stage, not only at the smaller stages. And also do new work, newly written plays or adaptations that had a sort of a fresh feeling about them on the main stage. Very keen on not turning the theatre for children and young into a sort of locomotive to get asses in the seats, as it's called, to give them a vibe of something artistically fresh on their own accord in a way. And then of course the second thing about it, which was really interesting, was to try and gap the whole age group. So to be able to do things for even the most difficult group people I call them people, children, young adults, from the age of 9 to 13, which is difficult to reach, or even harder, the 13, 14, 15 group. And
Why?
Also the really, really young ones.
Why is that age group so difficult, do you think?
Well, I think it's because they're sort of in the middle. I mean, they're a bit uncontrollable. They're starting to get their own interests and their own references. It's hard for a grown-up to understand the references of that age group. And we realized that when we made a production for them called Tromsø Revisited, that the critics, for instance, they didn't like it, and the older audience didn't like it, and a lot of the children didn't like it, but that particular age group really, really loved it. So it's a sort of, maybe they have what we call bad taste, or they have sort of different taste from us. At least they were referring to pop culture and subculture, and have a lot of internal sort of jokes and understanding of identity that needs a special aesthetics, I think, sometimes at least.
So how did you work on this particular aesthetic? How did you approach figuring out what that was?
Well, figuring it out was first trying to find out somebody who had actually worked with it. And then, of course, finding somebody who had worked with it with the audience at heart. I mean, this is, I can't say that I do this as a writer, but as a programmer, that's the main thing for me, to have the audience at heart. We found that in Sweden there's a guy called Mattias Brunn who's been working with a lot of projects a big project called Project Identity, where he's been working with and inside groups of teenagers in that age group. And so we invited him and said, okay, get yourself a team together and go and talk to the kids and see what you want to make. And he wanted to make a project about identity and about the identity of the town that they were living in. So it was a really interesting and crazy experiment.
When you're making something for this age group, Matthias Brun and the theatre, did you how did you approach the dramaturgy of that show, the structure of that show? Was it any different because of the age group?
Well, again, what I do is I try to talk to the artist and find out what they have at heart and respect their work. And it's very interesting to talk about that project because he had a very, very particular way of viewing it. And his way of viewing it was that he wanted it to have that kind of open dramaturgy that was coming out of the actual material they were gathering. So they were gathering material all the way, and the actors and the musicians that were involved in the project were also producing the material themselves. So the project of creating the performance went on from an open workshop, collecting material, visual material, and producing costumes and so on and text until the sort of last 5 days. And it was a very communal and open workshop. Everybody could come in, but if you entered the room, you had to. You couldn't leave and just say, I'm not interested anymore. It was sort of a contract. So if you enter this room, you have to stay with us, kind of thing. And that was a big challenge for me, because when you are a single dramaturg, like I was at this theatre, I couldn't give them that kind of faithfulness, because I had to be other places. So that, I think that, again, it shows... I wish I could have been there more, and I probably could have offered them more. In a way, if I couldn't give them that faithfulness, I had to also to let them go. And in a way that also limited my possibility of criticizing them, because the criticism had to come from inside the group in a way. So the dramaturgy became a very, it had two parts. One was a sort of trying to pretend we are these people who are teachers and students who want to talk to you about scientific results we have about the city of Tromsø. And then as they try to do that, the whole things fall apart. And then in the end, their real personalities sort of come out, and the conflicts, and they end up with sort of being a mesh of individual stories and crises and dance sessions and jokes and themselves talking about who they are and what they want to do in their dreams and their emotions. So a very interesting experience. And again, the kids, or the people, the age group, really, really loved it. And it was a certain feeling of people returning and again to see it. And you very rarely have people the age between 13, 14, 15 returning to the theatre voluntarily.
Yeah, no, that does sound pretty, not like something I've heard happening that often.
Yeah, but we had to take very fierce criticism for it. People saying, look, this is not theatre, this is not real art, this is not proper actors, this is not a story, the dancing isn't real dancing, they don't know how to dance, this kind of. And so we had really great discussions, although it was tough. We really had great discussions about whose aesthetics do we offer